Hey, folks, welcome back. It is Sunday, and that means it's stream time. So, hopefully, everybody had a good week, um, managed to get some game time in, and had a good holiday. Um, we have passed the Turkopolis for today, and so turkeys can rest easy for another year. All right. So looks like we got 5 folks in here. Good morning, Logan. Good morning, Cody. Um, let's see. So trying to get my brain in gear. Um, we are going to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about today, old computer games and kind of what we can learn from them. I mean, I guess computer games in general, but I feel like the old games have a lot to teach us in terms of conservation of resources, um, and getting the most out of simplicity. And so this conversation or this video was inspired by watching Cody recently playing Might and Magic on his channel. But also, from past streams on the old geek, who was he's played Eye of the Beholder, he's played Baldur's Gate, the original one. Um, so uh, there's and I played a lot of the games back in the day: Pool of Radiance, Curse of the Azure Bonds. Um, you know, I even used some of the building sets for Unlimited Adventures, which was the construction set that they put out for the gold box games. Uh, but yeah, there's I don't know how weighty of a subject it is, but I think in terms of coming up with something to do or coming up with things from these games, um, we can take a look and really kind of think about what we can learn. As usual, I'm going to go ahead and throw a link in the chat here. If you want to come on and talk, by all means. So, I guess first thing would be, um, if you haven't played one of these games in a long time, um, they're still available and you can still play them. There's a lot of them have been retooled for modern computers, or you can use emulators to do so. Um, Going as far back as even like one of my old favorites which was Temple of Apshai, which is very non-graphical. It's very simple maps and everything like that. But um, so with these games, if nothing else, you can really take a back to basics approach with them, in that playing through them will help you really fine tune what the bare bones necessities are for your games. Um, they generally follow that D&D pattern. Some of them break out, like the old Ultima games. A lot of some of them don't have parties, but um, they do still allow for um, a lot that we can take away, especially as GMs, for in terms of game world building, and the sorts of encounters that you can throw in. So to that point, and again, sorry if I seem kind of scattered this morning. Did not sleep well. I think I'm paying for the holiday indulgence, and we had my niece over that last night, so I never sleep well with somebody else in the house. Um, so the basics. Uh, Most of these games have a home base, which is really, I think, not necessary, but encouraged and recommended for a D&D style game. Other games too, but sticking to D&D specifically. Um, but the home base is important, and you need to make sure that it has a few things. Watching Cody play Might and Magic, we've got a guild, we've got a temple. The guild is there to get to help out the party with things, and often is a good place to set up for missions and adventures. The temple is a source of healing and other magics. You need to have merchants in your home base, but also going back to Might and Magic again, home bases don't have to be completely safe. I do see a lot of recommendations that home bases be safe, and I don't think that the recommendations, if you read most of those, read in depth for most of those, that when they mean safe, they mean that the base is safe from being attacked or taken out and removed from play. Good morning, Grumfield Slan. I'm going to say a lot because my brain just isn't firing on all cylinders. So if somebody wants to start an counter, that's cool. So the home base needs to be safe from external threat from removal, but it doesn't need to be safe completely within its own walls. You can have threats in the base. I think even Keep on the Borderlands has some kind of threat inside the base. You can have conspiracies, you can have unfriendly people. Unfriendly is, not necessarily hostile, but not necessarily cooperative. You can have kind of rumbling factions, you can have gangs, you can have thieves guilds. Um, these all can work against the party within the base and still have it be safe. Town guards, and town guards, for example, don't need to be necessarily hostile, as in they're going to attack the party to be a danger. It could just be that the town guard is particularly strict, and if the party tries to come back to town after dark, well, they may not be able to get in. Or the town guard is really vigilant, and so if your party's thief wants to get up to some shenanigans, it's going to come back and bite them. But a home base is very important, and it needs to have those things that the party's going to need. You can have multiples of those things, or you can have a small number of those things. Perhaps you don't have a guild because maybe your community is too small to really bring in a guild. But if that's the case, you can always have wandering NPCs. You can have periodic representatives. You can also combine some of those elements. Quest giving can happen from any part of that hometown. Anybody can give the party a quest, and that's one thing you always have to remember. Parties don't have to necessarily be handed quests. They can hear rumors. They can have to do quests in exchange for some of the services they're receiving. So a party doesn't have the gold to pay the temple for the services rendered. They can either go into debt and owe the temple a favor, or perhaps they get sent on a quest immediately and have to do so. And you can kind of tailor that based on where the party is. If the party is all racked from their last battle and they come back and they're needing healing, but they can't afford the healing, so they sort of start developing a debt tab with the temple, maybe. So just a moment here. Yeah, you Might and Magic was weird because you had like slimes randomly wandering around the town. And I realize not everything is directly translatable because, of course, they're working with the limitations of their programming ability, but it is also their world. Now, a large enough township or city might have slimes in the sewers that sometimes come up out of the sewers. Maybe at night, that's a problem. Well, and it can be both. This is the thing. I mean, the town guard is full of people, and so the town guard could be a general nuisance, but there might be one sergeant, or you maybe even a lowly guy on the rungs of the town guard who is friends with the party. Phil the Thrill, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see. So, yeah, so home base is definitely one thing we can take from the games. I think that's very useful. Um, yeah, I remember that you saw. Yeah, I saw you find that in the crates. You found the shopping lists and all of that. Um, yeah, and so there are. Um, I mean, again, your home base doesn't have to be completely safe. You can have threats there. The time honored, starting quest of clearing rats out of a cellar is often a home base sort of an adventure. Um, but the monster breeder is definitely an interesting spin on it. Having somebody actively in the village, in the home base, who is doing things uh, that will that are kind of a negative thing for the community and then for the players. So I think the next thing to think about is locations around the city. Every game has a few key locations around the city, and these are usually spaced within either a day's walk of the city or a couple of days at most. And so you'll see in the computer games, very often you've got things like mines, logging camps, a witch's hut, a mysterious cave, an old keep, a swamp, the little places where there can be adventures or where you can place further adventures in the future. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. I also think that's sort of more of a for a more developed, more fantastic world. Um, it kind of starts going over the bar of keeping things simple. Um, and yes, it is something that a fantasy setting would definitely, probably try to do. Uh, but at the same time, fantasy settings generally don't function at the level that they would, considering what they have available. Most fantasy settings are kept kind of weirdly ignorant of the greater resources out there, and I think that's kind of a byproduct of the fact that earlier versions of the games weren't really trying to tell the story of a high magic setting or a high fantasy setting. They were fantastic, but those fantastic things were often kept to the fringes and not fully within the control of the people living in the world. Um, yeah, I mean that's not a bad one. Having a manor house or like Village of Hamlet has that in the form of the moat house. So it's not a big deal, or not a big deal. It's not unusual. Excuse me. Well, we're gonna stream. Whether or not it's distracting to you, Mage, that's on you. Greetings, Mage's musings. So locations near um, the village or the home base are useful. They're important. They keep the game flowing and they allow those um, early stages uh, of the campaign to really let the players come and go without too much stress on them. And as time goes by, you can start seeding in those more distant adventures. Usually, once they've tromped around. the home base long enough. Now, remember always that the home base's primary purpose is to be a place for the party to retreat to and to get supplies and information for their next quest. Now, going back to the topic of the video, that really is done well in most video games. Most computer games have some assortment of things around, and they don't all have to be big. I think this is one of the big failings that a lot of people do when they're running their games or building their starting settings, is they want to put fully developed big dungeons everywhere. Um, they don't have to be. The caves that are nearby could be just a simple cave that's a monster lair, which is maybe a higher hit die monster that the party would have to really pour its resources in to beat, or the uh, it could be only a few chambers and is like a lair for a small war band of something, or raiders or bandits or something that effect. Could be that it's not the lair for anything, although it's reasonable to say that a cave is going to have some kind of life in it, especially in a fantasy setting. But that could just be a bear. um, it could be that there are bats in there, something to that effect. But don't necessarily feel that you have to build every interesting location near your home base as some um, major dungeon affair. An old ruined keep could be just a crumbled courtyard full of stones and overgrowth, and maybe one tower remaining with a couple of rooms of undercroft that are available to explore. Um, Interesting locations don't even have to be dungeon like. They could be a monument. They could be a curious old tree, a stump, a natural pool, a spring, things that just add character around the home base and allow you to either build in adventures there or seed them later on. And you'll see in computer games a lot of times they have triggered events where you might visit that pool several times, and all you get from it is maybe the ability to replenish your water supply, or a good place to rest. But once something triggers in the campaign, in the computer game in this case, then the next time you go back there, there might be something different. It might be scuzzy and slimed over, and now you have to find out why. It could be that there's a nymph there, or something to that effect. Could be that there's now a monster in the lake. So the other thing to remember is that those, again, we're going back to those locations around the home base. They don't have to be fully developed, and they don't have to remain static. Um, you know, a cave full of dwarves, once cleared out, could then become the lair of some sort of lesser dragon. I mean, especially if you're talking about your starting location. So the dwarves are all gone, but it's a dwarven gold mine, like say in the Might and Magic game that Cody is playing. Now a younger dragon moves in because it seems like a great place for, it's like a great starter home. He's getting out on his own. He's going to go ahead and get in there, start scratching some gold out of the walls. Yeah. So computer games. Yeah, I mean, inspiration is good. And I think one of the reasons that the older games really spoke to me on this, not just because people have been playing them lately. I feel like the older games were in that interesting spot to where computer software hadn't advanced enough to where the game did everything for you. So you still had to buy into the game to a certain degree, just like you do at the tabletop. When you're at the tabletop, you've got your dice, you got your character sheet, you've got all these mechanics that tell the story, but good form, a good portion of that, words, um, good portion of that comes from you, the player, still. And in the older games, I think there's still room for you as the player to fill in some of the blanks. A lot of those early dialogue trees are very basic, but you can imagine yourself having more complicated conversations and sort of you sort of fill the story in as you go along and sort of develop it on your own. Yeah, so this is true. If everything is a major location, then nothing's a major location, and this is an easy trap to fall into, especially if you have players who aren't particularly go-getterish. Um, you might feel the urge to make every location a huge appeal, a huge pull for the players. You definitely want them to be interesting, but at the same time, you don't want everything to be so overdeveloped that like Slan says, that it's just it doesn't count for anything. Yeah, well, you're that goes back to the really good piece of advice I once heard, especially for mystery games, but for any game. Uh, Try to avoid writing red herrings into your campaign because your players will make their own. And so if you're intentionally putting red herrings in, you're really making it difficult for the players in a way that goes above and beyond. We want to challenge the players, but we don't want to derail them with intentional red herrings. They're going to make enough of their own. And yes, we did mention computer games. So here is John. Well, and John, you're one of the inspirations for this video with all the games you play. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Bard's Tale is another good one. Some of the old King's Quest ones, those were really good too. And I feel like a lot of the games used very simple puzzles. Uh, Going back to the more recently viewed one, Might and Magic, you have to go through a bunch of spots to decipher a code. It's a very simple code. It's basically Hangman. And then once you have the word, you can then activate something. And I think that's the other thing too, is right there that teaches us we don't have to go into exotic puzzles and crazy, you know, uh, challenges to challenge our players. Sometimes it's just a matter of setting up a series of things that they have to find that they can then put together um, to figure out the answer themselves. But it also doesn't have to be a super advanced thing. They just adapted to Hangman for that dwarven code. Let's see. Alrighty. Yeah, and that's just another reason not to put them in. If a red herring is going to be ineffective or disruptive to the game, then there's no point in putting them in. Um, the King's Quest games stand out in my mind from back in the day in that they were. I liked how you gained skills, you improved your skills by doing things in the game. Climbing a tree over and over and over improved your dexterity. You also might fall out of that tree. Um, those are really cool. I remember my brother was really into those. So I think another thing that I really love from about these old games is much like old RPGs, they exist in that space before everything had become so tried and true, before everything had become so cliched. Watching Cody play Might and Magic, and I'm going to go ahead and quote Might and Magic a lot because it's the one that's fresh in my head. Tiger moles. It's a great monster. It goes back to the time honored D&D thing of having just a big animal or a special animal be a monster. Not everything has to be some masterwork of creature creation. It can be simple things, and giving it just a unique name, Tiger Mole is probably, I mean, D&D stat wise, it would just be a giant mole. But the Tiger Moles are a threat. They've got a cool name. They're blue, which that may just be an old version of trying to make them black with lighting, but simple animation techniques. It's not. I don't believe it's Quest for Glory. It was definitely one of the later in that King's Quest, and I know it wasn't King's Quest did change its name to Quest for Glory. I can't remember exactly what it is. I just remember it was the one with the lion people in it. And one of the things you did was play Mancala with the lion people, and that increased your wisdom, and then that you could do challenges, and that would increase your fighting abilities and stuff. So. Yeah, it's there. You definitely don't want to make. You don't want to make parts of your adventure locked off by the clues. I think it's safe to. We hear a lot of conventional wisdom nowadays saying that you shouldn't gatekeep parts of the game behind these skill challenges. Don't think that anybody who is saying that is telling you that you shouldn't have the gates. Just allow your players to circumvent those gates if they come up with a good way to do it. So if there are clues that you've put out and they find out the information otherwise, still go ahead and use it. Let's see. And it looks like Bear's coming in. I'll pull him in here in a second. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's a lot of those old games that had some weird inputs. Good morning, Bear.
Good morning. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Oh, every day's a gift. I keep forgetting Americans don't get that joke. It's only a Canadian thing. It's from Kids in the Hall, where there's this character called Cancer Boy who's just like, every day is a gift every time you see him. So, anyway.
I was a fan of Kids in the Hall.
You remember Cancer Boy? He was in Brain Candy, too. They put him in the movie.
Yeah.
Did you see me? I talked to the doctor. And I talked. It's really funny, man. It's crazy shit.
Kids in the Hall made it down. At least being in the Pacific Northwest, we had it. I don't know about everywhere else.
No. It was popular in the States, but it's just like it was really popular in Canada. You know what I mean? Like
it's homegrown comedy, so it's like
we shit on a lot of things that are Canadian here. Like we do not recognize success well in this country. If you get popular, boy, we're going to take you down a peg real quick. Like Canadians are mean to our celebrities. It's not nice. Anyway, I saw no one was in, and I was like, "What are they doing, man? The guy's been on for 25 minutes. I see all these familiar names in the chat. Everybody's left you high and dry. I'm here to help." Look, what do we talk
about? They don't always come in. It's fine. It's a pretty lightweight subject today. It's just talking about what we can gain and learn from the older video games. Newer video games, I feel like, are so overdone that they don't leave a lot. Although I would say the current version of Baldur's Gate does a fair job of still being like the old Baldur's Gate, and I did even pull some lessons from that one watching folks play it. I haven't been able to play it myself, but it really showed me how flat and boring a lot of my combats had become, because Baldur's Gate has some really nicely laid out battle scenes in that there's stuff going on with the terrain, there's different levels to it, there's complications in movement. So the fights end up being interesting, and they're not just I bash it with my sword. That's something I took away from that. I mean, it's still, I think the more advanced games don't equate as much to tabletop RPGs as maybe some of the experience of tabletop RPGs. We can still learn a lot because I mentioned it earlier. They do so much of the work for you now. And they are so vivid in their depictions and their sound and everything like that. There's not much left to your imagination. Older video games, I think, were fun in that regard that, we didn't have everything just splatted out on the screen for us. We still had to engage our imagination to fill in the holes while we were playing them because they were relatively simple.
Well,
by
then I
necessity.
started with like text adventures. I mean, that's my generation, right? Like we didn't even have video games. We had Zork. You know what I mean? It was
I mean,
pretty hardcore.
Zork, is definitely out there. I definitely I played a lot of it. But then we got things like the Gold Box, and before the Gold Box stuff, I've mentioned it a few times. There's Adventure Construction Set for the Commodore, which
that
was
was
a
pretty
great
big. That was pretty popular, actually. That thing.
ACS.
I've seen videos about it to this day on YouTube where people are talking about how much they love it.
It is one of the best. We don't get adventure construction sets anymore of any sort nowadays. I mean, everybody's so big on selling you a finished, well, not even a finished anymore because there's always DLC, but they want to sell you a game in a box. The idea of selling you a toolbox is just weird. They are out there, but like ACS, the reason it's so popular is because it'll let you do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you could rework every item that was in that data disk. You could rework every piece of graphic. As simple as they were, you could really have it really pushed that whole limited palette aspect because while you could modify everything, you still had those limitations. Like, you're on what, I don't even know how few bits of graphics you were on the 64.
I don't know. I kind of gave up on adventure games with Eye of the Beholder. I was playing it when I was in college, and I was on like level 6 or something like that. I don't remember what level of the dungeon I was on. I couldn't open a door. Nothing I could do to get open the door. And I had a friend who completed the game, and I asked him, I said, how the hell do I get this door? He goes, on level 2, there's a lever you have to pull. Otherwise, the door on level whatever doesn't know. I'm like, I'll go fuck yourself. Like, I'm done. I hate that. I don't mind a puzzle that's logic-based and you can sort of reason it out or trial and error. But with shit like you didn't do something on one floor that 8 floor later has a repercussion, I hate that kind of design.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where they built some, where they would build in some bad ideas, some bad shticks. And again, excuse me, my brain is mush today. But you can still take away from that as something not to do.
Yes.
I mean, unless you repeat clues towards that final goal. Like if there was a lever on one level that then activated something a couple levels later that then required you to do something else that moved forward towards that 8 levels up, down, whatever, then that would be a good example. Would be the hangman thing that was in Might and Magic when Cody was playing it. You have to go around to a bunch of locations to get the letters for this word that you have to enter in, and then eventually enter it in. But you're constantly getting a refresher on that because there are little mini quests. I mean, they're not even really quests; they're just clues scattered around for that code word, and that is a way to do it. If the lever, going back to your example, if that lever in Eye of the Beholder had some sort of an inscription with it saying, you're giving some sort of clue as to when it paid off.
Yeah, it may well have. By the way, I'm thick as a brick.
Yeah, it's also been how many years since you played it?
Yeah, I'm talking, Jesus, that's 40 years ago almost, I think.
Yeah,
35.
You and I are about the same age, so
it's been a minute. I could be remembering it wrong, but I just remember it just arsed me off so badly. I was like, I'm done. Your stupid game is deleted. Get out of my life. Like, I hate you. And ever since then, I've never touched adventure games. I played the original Baldur's Gate for about 20 minutes and then I just find, so I had the pleasure of working a little tiny bit in the video game industry, mostly relating to voice design and stuff like that, and voice direction and voice acting. I've never been like, say the level Mr. Max was, or other people that I know who have been like deep in the industry working as, coders and designers and what have you. But there was always a joke I would make, which is, I wish we had the ability to know who designed which part of the adventure so we could just go over to their desk and slap them in the back of the head and go, what made you think that was fun? What made you think that was fun? That thing, so.
Yeah, it's, computer games do stupid things a lot. I was actually just on the this morning grumping about a newish game. So there's a 4X game called Stellaris, right?
I heard of it.
Yeah. So like several times, I'm getting back into the groove of playing it. Several times I've been screwed over when a part of my empire rebels, right? That doesn't bother me. The fact that the part of the empire that rebels suddenly has a fleet 3 times the strength of any fleet I have in the empire doesn't make sense. And it really makes it near impossible to recover. I've got a maximum fleet strength of 400 and the rebelling fleet is 1.1k in fleet strength. Where did those ships come from? It doesn't make sense. That's, in my mind, that's bad design. Kind of goes back to your lever on one level, and then 8 levels later it pays off. It's in the case of Stellaris, in my brain, it should be that some of my fleet strength breaks away and the game takes it, right? And so now we actually have a translatable rebellion. Maybe give it a little bit of a boost. They got off-world support. They're Sandinisting it, right? Yeah, they got some support, and that's just bad design. That said, the rest of the game is fun and it's really good, and it's challenging. And I think challenging is a good thing. And kind of bringing it back on topic, your D&D setting or whatever campaign you're doing, because a lot of these lessons could be expressed for almost any game. You want challenging, you want interesting, you don't want asshole design where it just comes back and slaps the party every time they go out of the door. I mean, it's okay to force them to make decisions whether they fight or flight, but you also don't want to make it to where everything is a flight. The only option is ever fleeing. I mean, and by fight, I also include in that like things like parlaying and trying to deal with the monsters, something like that. Let's see. It's I had a friend who ran Cyberpunk for the longest time who, like clockwork, every time he felt that the players were getting any kind of leg up, suddenly a car full of body plated full Borgs with miniguns showed up, and it was ridiculous. So yeah, room full of ninjas, sure.
That's bad. That's not good. Why would he do that? That doesn't make sense. That's like your rebellion. It doesn't make sense. Why would just a truckload of these guys just show up? Come on now.
Yeah, and that was just, in that case, that was a bad GM who just felt that it was his job to slap the players down.
Well, no, it is your job to slap the players down in Cyberpunk. You just got to do it creatively.
Well, yeah. I mean, nobody would actually even complain, I think, if it was a car full of just regular dudes with guns, which is deadly enough in Cyberpunk. But it was always this like full Borg hit squad that would show up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course, this is probably pre-full Borg conversion because it was back in the Cyberpunk 2013 days. Mm-hmm. And so it was probably the guys with body plating and the linear frames, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's the same deal. I mean,
it was ridiculous. I mean, there are ways to punish your players without being a dick. Like, the one player in my Cyberpunk game who ended up getting put into the Death Valley Free Prison because he did something stupid. He was firing off a high caliber firearm, basically a 454 Casull, like a 454 revolver.
Yeah.
In the docking collar between the space station and the Starliner, chasing down a bad guy. He wasn't firing safety rounds or anything like that. They're gonna, fragment when they hit the walls or anything like that. So he's blowing holes in the docking collar in a space colony. Yes, Interpol's gonna arrest you and put you in prison.
Oh yeah. Listen, it's like when I had in Cyberpunk when I had a an AV stealth up on the guy while he was in the woods, and he's like, "I should have heard it coming." I'm like, "It's the fucking future. What are you talking about? You should have heard it coming. They have stealth systems, man. Come on." Like that's the thing. It's like players. I think that's why video games sometimes are as punitive as they are, is because they don't have to listen to the whining of the player when the player doesn't feel they're being treated fairly at that point in time, whether it's accurate or not. They don't have to listen to it. They can just put their game out and that's it, and they can ignore it.
They also get to build knowing that people are going to save game and then go try something and then back up to a previous save.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that tabletop gamers can't really do.
Well, not unless you're using 5e hardcore mode where they have that candle of saving. It's so stupid. Like, it's a hardcore game, but there's a save spot for magic item. It's so dumb.
You don't have to put it in your game.
No, you don't. But it's like you're selling me a product called hardcore mode, and then you have a cheat in it. Like, what are you talking about? Go away, child.
Cody brings up a good point too, and I do like this about the older games that and this is kind of what I was talking about with like the tiger moles and stuff like that. They have a sort of a tongue-in-cheek comedy about them in a lot of cases. And that goes back to those early innocent days of gaming where we were coming up with weird monsters that were just kind of those prototypical monsters where you're like, oh, okay, it's an owl bear, it's a tiger mole, it's a rust monster. What are these things, these monsters that are not completely serious? Every time you pull open a monster book nowadays, it's this grim, gritty, like heavily detailed monstrosity of a thing. Even things like those old classic owlbears and rust monsters and stuff are now rendered as zoologically believable, and and it does remove a lot of that tongue-in-cheek fun from the old from the game that was kind of, I think, part of a lot of people's nostalgia for the game, running into weird stuff that was just weird and was fun. I mean, you'd go into a dungeon, you're like, oh, there was that sphere with a bunch of energy tentacles and it did horrible things, and what the hell was that thing?
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm more into the weirdness than I'm into the tongue-in-cheek stupid puns. Like, nothing are like, I hate puns. I despise puns on like a primal level. So when I see them in a game I'm playing or something, I'm just like, ugh. But weird's good, man. Weird can be really inventive and really crazy, and then you get some just gonzo wah, and it's fun stuff. But I mean, you're right. Creativity is vanishing slowly.
I don't agree that it's vanishing, especially in the hobby industry. I just think that
I'm in video games.
Oh, in video games. Well, definitely in video games. I mean, video games. Well, that's not true. If you're into the indie scene, the independent video games, like which is where most of the computer games I pull from are, there's still a lot of rinse and repeat, but it's actually very much in the spirit of innovation in those games. Somebody will come out with, say, a game like Stranded Deep, right, which is surviving on a desert island. Somebody else will come out with a surviving on islands game, but now it's got some new aspects to it. Maybe it advances on what Stranded Deep did and, is improving the game. Or then you'll suddenly get a mashup like the game I'm playing right now, which is Sunken Land. And that is Waterworld survival with it's Stranded Deep meets, Escape from Tarkov meets, all this other stuff. And it's, you see it a lot, just not in the mainstream games. Mainstream companies are for video games are kind of where mainstream film producers are, and that's create what makes sense, or what would not make sense, but what sells. Excuse me, and what's safe, and what we know people will buy millions of copies of. Not make something interesting. Meanwhile, you have games like Stardew Valley, which was developed it's a game my family played a lot, which continually gets updated, was created by one dude, and created a genre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing we can take that is a lesson from modern game design, and I say this with all the love in my heart as something not to do, excessive cutscenes. I don't want to read a movie. I don't want to watch a video game. You know what I mean? Like, I want to play a video game. I want to watch a movie. So when I like, for example, Dragon Age, Jesus Christ, I couldn't get out of the castle because it was just one cutscene after another where I had to watch people talk to each other and just like sit there and stare at the screen watching the voice actors going. I'm like, I'm here to play a game, man. I'm not here to watch you show off. So I think, if you're making your NPCs have absolute conversations with each other in front of the poor players, maybe that's, not something you should be doing, and take that from the idea,
Yeah, a lot of the indie games that I watch more games getting played than I get a chance to play them because I can't afford all the games that I want to play.
Yeah.
One thing I really love seeing is people who are world building and expositing while you're playing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we're on a haunted house investigation. So as I'm approaching the house or entering the house, I'm having a radio in my ear that's telling me what the goals are.
Yeah.
Or, the exposition is part of the tutorial. Maybe I'm going through and I'm learning how to use all the controls, but I'm reading script in the game, and it's maybe the character reading it out loud. So, he's actually saying it to me. So I'm not having to read, like you said, read a movie, kind of,
Jesus, watch a game. Yeah. Read a movie. Exactly.
But there are a lot of good things being done. It's just, you have to look outside the mainstream for it, because there are people doing really fun games, that break those molds. And Cody mentions your duck character as a way to have humor, but not puns. So
yeah.
Well, that's the thing that made the duck folk in RuneQuest cool. Is they were played completely serious.
Man, that's how comedy has to work. You have to play it serious, but let the humor of the situation be. So it's hard. Comedy is hard. Death is easy. Comedy is hard. That's the oldest acting statement you'll ever find, right? It's really, really important to know that. Yeah. And that's a lot of the problem with game design, NPCs, things like that. Is people do not understand how difficult comedy is. And a lot of what we see is the what's his name from In Living Color, The Truman Show,
Jim Carrey.
A lot of people, it's the Jim Carrey wink, mug for the camera. Mike Myers suffers from that as well. They're funny men who don't know how to just let the comedy exist. They have to be pulling a face. They have to be doing a waka waka. It's Fozzie Bear versus Rolf. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is.
That's true.
When you get the guys who know, or the writers or the actors or the guys, gals, whatever, who know how to do comedy properly, you get stuff that's genius, because they let it, like Mel Brooks was a master of that, of playing it straight. Monty Python were masters of playing it straight. So I find there's a lot of people in our hobby, and especially in the video game world, who think they're a lot funnier than they are. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, I wish someone would tell them they're not as funny as they think they are.
Yeah, I think it's you can see a lot of the difference. Like, even going back to Jim Carrey, his later work gets better, where he stops just being the In Living Color character and starts being a true comedy actor, or even a dramatic actor, because the guy does, like Robin Williams, even does non-comedy roles.
Yeah,
you see that with a lot of comedy actors. They eventually become really good, solid actors. Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Well, no, but like,
I mean, let's face it. He started out with, "I don't know where I am. There's blood on my knife."
I love that movie. I don't know why people shit on that movie so much.
It's a great movie.
It's a really good movie.
It is a great movie. Oh, I've got a Curtis waiting.
Oh, Curtis is joining us. All right.
Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing great. Just got back from my parents' place.
Oh, cool. Are you? Did you come loaded with leftovers?
Few too many to count, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I actually hurt myself with leftovers last night. I ate a little too much mac and cheese. So
that was me, except with pretzels. Jesus Christ, do I love pretzels? Oh my God.
If they are not soft and warm, I do not want them.
These were. These were, though.
Oh, dangerous.
They had exactly the right amount of salt on them, and there was a cheese dip that came with them. And it's like, oh my God, what are you doing to me?
I haven't had lunch yet. Shut the fuck up, please.
I'm sorry.
I had my niece was over last night, and that's one of the other reasons I didn't sleep well. The mac and cheese was not sitting well, but also but she came over hearing that we had a whole bunch of leftover mac and cheese from Thanksgiving, and she was there, and she wanted mac and cheese last night for dinner, but we gave her a choice and talked about it, and it's total aside. But it was this morning she demanded that I make good on the promises of mac and cheese, so she had mac and cheese for breakfast. So
That's nice.
well,
to answer the Jim Carrey dramatic actor thing that suddenly is now a topic. Jim Carrey's a fine actor. The problem is that he wanted to be taken seriously, and he suffered from. It's why it was really funny that he made Man in the Moon, because he suffered from the same syndrome that Andy Kaufman suffered from, which was he made a career being a clown and then wanted people to take him seriously and got depressed when they wouldn't. Whereas Robin Williams was just depressed from the word go, and that's how it manifested itself. It was just I honestly believe Robin Williams' brain just worked that way.
Well, Jim Carrey's in a similar place, though, as you find out later on. The man had serious issues, and I think that's comedians, a lot of them in general.
So I used to hang out with the comedians, local comedy club, stuff like that, when I was working in bars and the film industry. And I would always hear the same thing from people who didn't know the comedy industry. They'd be like, "Why aren't you a stand-up comedian? You're so funny. Oh my God, you could just make a room fall to tears. Oh, why aren't you?" And I would always look at them and say the same thing, because I don't hate myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have enough pain to be that funny.
Well, I have enough, but I just don't hate myself for the experiences. Whereas I've hung out in rooms full of comedians. These are miserable people. Oh, yeah. And they just rail on each other. Like it's funny as fuck, but it's really dark at the same time. In about an hour or two of hanging out with a bunch of comedians, it's starting to get like, okay, I think I need to go do something else other than hang out with this many upset people. And if you introduce alcohol to the scenario, oh dear God, because then it's like just gets ugly.
So, Curtis, anything that you feel is a good takeaway from computer games, old or new? I was thinking about old ones when I did the stream, but
what's Daggerfall? Everyone keeps saying Daggerfall.
Daggerfall is one of the Elder Scrolls games.
Oh, I never played those. Okay.
Daggerfall is probably it's really it's the template upon which all Elder Scrolls were really built.
It's not the OG open world, but it is the one that set the standard for what.
Yeah, that game, talk about things that come back to haunt you. Oh my God. Somewhere in the game, you will find a mummy finger, right? In the treasures. You find the mummy finger, and you carry that thing around with you forever. And then suddenly, one day, night falls in town, and this shrieking freaking mummy is after you because you have the finger, and it's cursed, and you can't get rid of it. And so that mummy then becomes a hazard to you, like resting and stuff. But it wasn't like the Eye of the Beholder thing. It was truly like that. You felt like the curse was played well. Like you found this thing, and it took a while for the mummy to find you.
See, that's great. I love that. Put that in a treasure hoard. Put some weird little object in a treasure hoard that's going to seem like a curiosity, and they're going to be like, "Ooh, I'm going to take the weird silver spoon that has the picture of the baby's head on it," and then 10 levels later pay that off when the demon baby cherubs show up looking for their spoon. I mean, that's
I fully believe that in the old treasure charts you would see in older games, that's what a lot of those weird mundane items were for.
I was thinking more along the lines of like when you're in that starting area of Daggerfall and you're just exploring this first dungeon that you crash landed in, and all of a sudden you hear this, whoa! This is the first freaking skeleton you come across.
Oh yeah, they're the screeching, cackling, like Harryhausen style skeletons. Yeah.
And then when you stay the night at actual Daggerfall for the first time, you hear vengeance. Jesus, what's going on?
Yeah, the town can get attacked. But it's. Where was I going with that? Yeah, the old items that you would see on those charts, I think, were there because you're not always going to find like super valuable shit, so it might just be a cup or an ordinary ring or a brooch or something like that. But that's just a place to plant a seed for your game. I mean, let's face it. Frodo's ring, when he finds it, when it's originally written, or not Frodo, but Bilbo's ring
Bilbo,
Yeah.
is just a ring of invisibility.
Well, and there's still that throwaway line in Lord of the Rings, right? There are many magic rings in the world, and none of them are to be taken lightly. And then by the end of the series, there are like 9, 10, 12 magic rings in the world, and they're all accounted for. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a complete change in pace.
I still want to find a copy, and I'm sure I will not be able to afford it, of the pre-rewrite of The Hobbit. Because
Pre-rewrite of The Hobbit?
So The Hobbit, everybody knows, for the most part, is the Hobbit that Tolkien rewrote, reworked, and published after he wrote Lord of the Rings. There is the early original version of The Hobbit is different in small ways, but different because it was written without any attachment to the Lord of the Rings. But when the Lord of the Rings came out, Tolkien evidently rewrote it and edited it somewhat to make it fit.
I know that.
So yeah, I would really love to find a version of it. I think it's like, because the rewrite happens in like the 60s, I think. But yeah, it's still, though, I mean, I think a lot of computer games did things like that early on. I was mentioning it earlier. They would use triggered events, whether it was a timer or you did something in the game.
Event flags, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And back in the construction sets, we would, for the computer games, you could do this to do complex things. Like, and one of the things I did with Unlimited Adventures, which was the gold box construction set for the old gold box computer games for D&D. I had a town, a city that was mapped out, and you would go through the city and you'd do the thing. And then once you triggered an encounter, it secretly teleported you to a complete clone of the city that now had vampires hunting you. And that's how you would have to do it back then, because you couldn't just insert new characters and stuff. You had to literally like copy and paste the whole town and put a new set of encounters there. And so like this new version of the town, you might go to places that were friendly to you before, and now they're boarded up or closed. They won't let you in because you're marked by these vampires. And you can do that. Kind of trying to bring it back to topic. You can do that in your campaign too. I mean, you can actually write little notes on the side. If this happens, this is going to happen. If the players don't go on this quest, these are the things that will fall out from it. You don't have to fill them out all the time, completely. You don't have to fully define what they are, but you can certainly have little presets for your game world for things that'll happen when certain criteria are met. And it could be that, all right, after the players get to X level, the home base is no longer safe. It can be attacked. It can be influenced by outside threats. Yeah, so you can definitely use some video game design logic there, I guess.
That makes sense.
Grumpy's Land, is it the 1938 edition? Possibly. I'm not sure.
Did you ever address Phil the Thrills question?
Which one was that?
Do you think old games did sandbox better than new ones?
Oh yeah, I had tagged that one, but yeah, and I had it up. I think the biggest problem with sandboxes nowadays, and I know it's not a favorite of Bear, but
Really
is that
isn't.
most people don't understand how they're supposed to be run. It's become a word that doesn't really mean anything anymore, because there are hex crawls and then there are sandboxes. Hex crawls are that nothing, as far as I understand it, are the nothing is defined until you go into the hex, and then we determine what's there. But you can also do a hex crawling sandbox. It's weird. There's like this weird fucking Venn diagram of of sandboxing. But I think by their very nature, a lot of them were either very linear or were sandboxy. If you're playing Ultima, for example, it's a real good example of a true sandbox. There's things out there to find, but the order in which you find them and your ability to take care to deal with them is completely up to the players.
Yeah.
There are many times in Ultima where I would go someplace and I'm like, I am clearly not high enough level to be here, but I was able to wander around and find my way there. I mean, hell, I remember the very first time I played World of Warcraft. I never got into it, but my wife was like, "Hey, play with me on World of Warcraft." I'm like, "Cool." And so I got on one day when she was not on there, and I somehow skirted a shoreline that is supposed to be sort of a barrier, and ended up in a place where I couldn't get back the same way I got there. And to get out of there, I had to go through an area that was way high level. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can just swim back. And I jumped down in the water, and there's this massive shark like down in the water. I'm like, no, I'm screwed. I'm screwed. There are evil white gorillas in the jungle that want to pound me, and there's a giant shark, and there's fish dudes, and I'm clearly not supposed to be here.
I was supposed to be here today. Exactly.
Like,
there you go.
I used to play on one of the old Mush Mucks text, based multi-user, and there was a great one. I loved it. It was a World of Darkness cyberpunk mashup called Dark Metal. Really well done. However, the first time I ever played on it, my human cyborg character walks into a Sabbath bar. I'm like, and dies.
Yeah.
Like, just I've been playing the game for 10 minutes and I'm dead. Because I wandered into a location where I wasn't high enough level for, clearly. But the game didn't prevent me from doing that. I think to go back to Phil's comment, I think a lot of video games did that by necessity or by design. It's hard to say. Like, Ultima is by design, but I think a lot of them didn't have a lot of memory to work with. And so they would just leave things open for you to go to, and it was up to you to kind of grind. The one advantage that video games have over tabletop, I think, is grinding is horrid at the tabletop. Nobody wants to grind in a tabletop role-playing game.
Come on, send them to the sewers to fight the rats and have nothing else interesting happen other than rats.
Well, and the part of that is because fighting those rats is going to take way longer than it would on a computer, because a computer is just repeatedly hitting the mouse button or whatever command key, and it auto fights the thing. So the grind, they can afford that grind, and sandboxes like that are really good for grinding, because like, if I go to the forest of whatever, I know that there are army squirrels there that I can beat up in masses and gain slow bits of experience.
How are army squirrels? That sounds awesome.
I just made it up.
Well, keep going. I'm listening. You had my interest.
I was actually informed by an old game that I used to play on my so in my life as a young gamer, there was an adult gamer in our life. He was a city computer programmer, and so he had all sorts of computer games, but he also had board games, and he had like the Menser D&D box set and everything like that. Long-haired, pot-smoking hippie guy who worked for the city. Great guy. Used to let us do chores to earn money to go buy game shit, and would take us to the game store. Really cool guy. But he had this game on the Trash 80, TRS 80, for those who don't know. But and there were army fleas in there. You'd fight these giant fleas that were called army fleas, and I'm like, that just sounds horrible. But
I want to fight army squirrels. My God, that sounds awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, literally, that's something I was commenting on.
How fast can the army squirrel strip a man to bone?
And that's the sort of fun that I'm talking about that you used to have with the older computer games and older tabletop games. Like, in Cody playing Might and Magic, they have the tiger moles. It's a name, and really they're just a giant mole, with number of appearing like 1 to 4, as opposed to like most moles in real life are solo, right? But these tiger moles, these giant moles that you find in this dwarven mine, are nasty and they kill party members. But army squirrels are just the same thing. You take a squirrel stat. What happens when there are 40 of them running through the forest in a pack?
Love it.
Even if they're not like carnivorous, maybe they're territorial and they still have sharp teeth, but they'll strip a forest bare of all of its nuts in no time.
Or a party.
Or there's your catch, your call to adventure. The local farmer says his orchard is being plagued by army squirrels. Can you help him? And it's something different than rats in the cellar.
I just like the idea now of making my players do fetch quests too. Like, here, go get me 10 sets of wolf ears. Go.
Fetch quests are actually a good way to pad your campaign out. And I always forget about it. I always want to have the parties be able to go to, like, the party will go to an NPC in my games, and they'll be able to deal with it immediately some way. I always forget about I can do this for you, but you'll have to complete a quest for me, which sounds dumb, but people still like it. And that's how you actually, build some of your world too. Because, all right, I can help you with this, but it'll require the mushrooms that only grow at the old haunted monastery. Can you go get those for me? And I can make you the potion you seek. Okay. Cody pulled that on us in his OSE game. Party needed healing. They needed healing potions. We went to the witch. She's like, I can brew you a potion, but you got to go to this cave and get me these mushrooms. We get there and there are kobolds. And that's side quests and fetch quests are a great thing to have in your game. First of all, it allows you as a GM to have some things that don't require massive amounts of prep. It's really a very simple goal. And it also keeps the campaign from feeling like you're constantly going into one dungeon after another.
It also avoids the 5th edition module problem, where it feels like every single encounter is trying to one up the previous one.
Yeah, it's all epic.
If you read the actual 5th edition modules, like, you'll look through all the encounters and it's like, why does it feel like every single encounter is trying to one up the previous one?
So I designed this into Final Age. When you get to Kingsgate, specifically the city of Kingsgate, which is the start setting, when you go and I introduce the village, everybody's like, why do you put so much work into all the villagers? All I need to know is who makes this and that. Yeah, except if you read their descriptions, you'll see there's quests hiding in all of their descriptions for you. Things you can give players to do. Like the apothecary who might need this one type of flower that you can go out and find, corpse blossoms, things like that. Like,
dude, I was looking at the small plot line you put in about the standstill for the new construction area.
Oh yeah, that's a whole
there's a whole bunch of construction workers basically doing nothing, and it's like, that's a plot right there.
Yes, very good, Curtis. Well done, sir.
It's I had something I was gonna say, I can't remember now. Brain mush. Grabelle's Land. Have you ever seen a squirrel lynch mob in the park? They occur when locals keep feeding them. It's just, I think fetch quests are really underused. And back to your thing about that's what it was, the world-ending campaigns. So I really wish that somebody would bring modules back. Modules were
like single run modules, one and dones.
Well, they don't. Unfortunately, they're not, like, as far as I've been told, they're not very marketable these days.
They're driving the economy on Drive-Thru RPG and DM's Guild.
That is true. But those guys don't have to print them out and publish them.
I remember getting a whole bunch of one-shot modules when Paizo was first doing Pathfinder First Edition.
Yeah,
like, the core rulebook just came out, and they made some.
They would do their adventure arcs and stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, they had even smaller ones. They did like really bite-sized adventure ones. These were like 30-page little pamphlets, and it was like $10, and it was like $10 to entertain a group for like 2 sessions. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the thing and there are companies doing those. There are companies that are doing them, and they are putting them out in print. but somewhere along the lines, the industry decided that they weren't the way to go. And a lot of that, I think, comes from this perception that a good adventure, and look back at my, B2 is one of the worst modules ever video. Um, um, good modules require like some kind of a serious hook and an actual goal and a progression. And no, they don't. Sometimes just going, through the pass of skulls to clear it out for the local lord. I mean, look at all those good little short Conan stories where he goes, he gets a job, he does the thing, things happen. Although, to your whole bit about the campaigns always being the end of the world scenarios, there is somebody published a mega campaign where all of those WotC plot lines all happened. Like, it's a worst case scenario. Like, Tiamat did get summoned, and it's this horrible apocalyptic fantasy setting in the Forgotten Realms where all of those things that could have gone wrong did go wrong. I can't remember the name of it, but it's out there.
I'm
that
listening.
Sounds actually interesting now.
Are the Harpers dead? Has Elminster been spit roasted by Drow? Come on, give me something good to work with.
People like to give the Forgotten Realms shit. Forgotten Realms used to be cool.
Yeah, well, you know what? Disco was cool at one point too.
But no. Actual Forgotten Realms, if you go back to the pre-WotC days of Forgotten Realms, TSR Forgotten Realms was written well enough to where you knew what was going on and you knew what was going on in the world, but there's plenty of room to do stuff. And they also talked about the whole Forgotten Realms. They didn't talk about just the Sword Coast.
Have you not heard my joke about that? The Forgotten Realms is referring to everything other than the Sword Coast because they forgot it existed.
Yeah, it's, so Forgotten Realms itself as a setting is good. It's just the current iteration of it is not.
If I may, I'll take umbrage only or disagreement on one thing. Forgotten Realms never survived the transition to 2E because they tried to make the transition to 2E an actual in-game event, in canon universe event, and it broke the Forgotten Realms.
They did the same thing with 3rd edition. They did the same thing with 4th edition. It was...
Greybox Forgotten Realms is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, and all of the stuff that came out contiguous to that, so...
Apparently you got 2 fans of the Disco Boys in your chat.
Let's see. Look at some of the comments that I missed, maybe. It's the wrong kind of fetch quest.
To go back to that, though, I feel like modern games actually feel a bit more sandboxy in that they have a difficulty adjustment mechanic in it, so that no matter where you go, you can at least like attempt it, whatever challenge is there. As opposed to a lot of the older games where it's like you must be this tall in order to do anything here, otherwise you just die instantly.
Yeah, they did have a lot of gatekeepy stuff in the old games too.
But I will say at the same time, you know what I didn't have to do in old school games? I didn't have to collect a trillion fucking collectibles. I didn't have to go to a shrine every 50 fucking feet like in Zelda to do some random ass puzzle in order to get a thing, and I get 4 of those things in order to trade it in for a heart container. Like, I didn't have to go to some tall ass building and go in order to fill out a fucking map that I could have been filling out this entire time while exploring it. Like, it's like there's so many bizarro mechanics in new school sandbox games that are just like...
Now, in Zelda, did you have to get the collectibles, or is that just there if you wanted to complete the game?
It was required and it wasn't required. Because in Breath of the Wild, they were completely optional. You only needed to do them if you wanted Master Sword. The same thing with Tears of the Kingdom. The problem is that they tied the Master Sword to the best ending in Tears of the Kingdom. So you feel like it's like, okay, damn it, okay, so I have to go get it, you know.
All right, I'm gonna pull this one up and we can all attack Logan.
Oh yay! What?
So this is a weak question. So a good module A GM can take the worst module. Yes, that is a thing. Absolutely. But that can be said of anything. Cookies, spaghetti, house paint, fashion design. A good such and such can make anything and have fun with it. A good module is a module where I don't have to do that as a GM.
Well, I wanted to
That's what
remind you of
modules
something,
are.
and I'm so glad Curtis brought it up, which is your video about B2. Oh, you're a fucking cock tease. I saw that title, I'm like, finally, someone who agrees with me that this is not the greatest fucking adventure ever written and is actually an annoying piece of shit. No, we're singing its fucking praises again. Fuck.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I
didn't
hate
say
that
it was
stuff.
amazing. I said
No,
it
but
was.
you didn't
But
talk about how shit it is, and that
it's
bothered
not
me.
shit.
It is
That's
shit.
because it's not shit.
Absolute shit.
Why is it shit?
Because
Tell me.
Because it's shit. It's dumb. It's stupid. It makes no sense. If you have a universe where
Okay,
this
that's
is happening,
5-year-old logic. Why is it stupid?
it's not 5-year-old logic. It's adult writing logic going, this doesn't make sense. These things would not be living next to each other. This would not exist. It's so fucking D&D. It's so like gamey, and that's what I
Yes,
hate about it.
because it's a teaching module for the game of D&D.
But people rave about it like it's the greatest module ever fucking written.
I've never heard anybody say that.
Oh my
ever.
God, really? Come on, Eli. Pay attention to the fucking OSR crowd on this fucking
I don't
YouTube.
pay attention to them because they have
They
a jaded
all
view of the
sing
past
the
that's not real.
praises of Borderlands like it's the
The
greatest.
OSR crowd is its own worst enemy. They actually have this opinion of old school gaming that is a fantasy. It's a nostalgic thing that they concocted that never existed.
And one part of it is their absolute praise of Keep on the Borderlands.
Yes, Keep on the Borderlands is a good adventure. It's a good introductory module. It does what it's intended to do. It is also the dungeon style of the time.
Yes.
Logical dungeons were not a thing until much later in the game. That's like saying like the first apple pie was not as good as today's apple pie because they were just figuring out
as good
pie.
as anything. I said it was just garbage in and of itself. I didn't compare it to anything.
No.
You're extrapolating an argument I'm not making, sir. I'm not making that.
It is not garbage in and of itself, though.
It is garbage in and of itself because it, like anything else, it's subjective. You enjoy it. I don't. N2, which Yogi says is objectively a bad module, I disagree because as Logan said, you can make it into a good module. And there are actually web pages out there where people have written articles about how to turn the Forest Oracle into a good module.
But
so
that's beside the point. If it's a good module,
saying.
you shouldn't have to do that. And that's it. Like I was just bringing it up that his argument about you can do that to any module. Yes, absolutely you can. But a good module, in my mind, is a module that you don't have to do. You don't have to do a bunch of legwork to make it playable and enjoyable. Keep on the Borderlands is going to be playable and enjoyable regardless.
I never enjoyed it, and I don't find it playable, and that's a personal thing. Therefore,
that's
for
a personal
me,
thing.
It's hot garbage.
But you present it as a very as an absolute, and that's my problem.
Well, okay, so here's the world we live in. Our thoughts and feelings are our absolutes because we are the ones experiencing them in our version of the world. This idea that we must all be completely balanced and take everybody's into account. No, but that's the argument you're using.
No.
And that is an argument I've dealt with only. Hang on, let me finish. That is an argument I've only ever encountered when dealing with the leftist side of anything. It's this everybody, well, it's your opinion, but your opinion is different. It's the world I live in. I feel this. I don't need to consider everybody else's view on it. I can have my own without having to take everybody else's thing. So for me, it's hot garbage. For you, it's a great module, or it's a good module, or it's a mediocre module. It's your interpretation of it. What I get arsed off about, and I said it earlier and I'll say it again, is the way it is presented like it's the holy grail of D&D modules for some reason. And I will never understand it. It winds up on all the top 10 best lists. It winds up in the greatest 100 modules. It's always in the top 10 of the greatest 100 modules of all time. It's like, I don't get it. It's the same reason I don't get Tomb of Horrors. I think Tomb of Horrors is garbage as well. But people praise it, and they go on about how it's one of the best modules ever written. Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
that's all I'm saying. It's just for me, I don't like it, and I'm allowed to not like it.
That's true, and I understand what you're saying, Bear. But at the same time, while you're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to not agree with it.
Absolutely,
and I'm entitled to my own opinion.
Absolutely, and
the problem I have, and I'm going to talk over you here a moment because it's my stream. Is you want to barrel roll your way over
No, I
other
don't.
voice. Yes.
That's bullshit, dude. That's bullshit. You're now making an ad hominem attack. You're attacking me instead of my argument.
No,
That's
your
bullshit.
argument was it was dumb and it was stupid and it was all of that.
From my perspective.
Yes.
For
why?
me.
And all I asked was why.
Because I don't like it. And I said, it doesn't make sense. Having this place doesn't make sense in a logical sense in a world design for me. It is super gamey. It is absolutely the epitome design of this is a game, as opposed to this is something that I'm
because old
exploring.
D&D was actually played as a game and less as a role-playing experience.
And yet people today still call it a great module. So therefore, that gaminess is something people want. For me, I don't like it because I don't want that gaminess in my stuff.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
That's fine.
But I'm being told I'm telling you you're wrong. I'm not telling anyone they're wrong. If you like it, you like it. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. But I cannot like things, and for reasons I don't. Not everybody likes the same films. Not everybody likes the same music. Not everybody likes the same food. I have literally seen people go off on pineapple on pizza like it's a crime against humanity. It's this thing we do where if people disagree with us, we wind up now on a side, and that's so silly that we're doing that. I don't like B2. I was making just a joke that I was like, this video, I thought someone was going to agree with me, and they didn't, and now we're here having an argument about it. It's silly. It doesn't have to be this deep.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just not agreeing with you.
And that's fine. We can totally disagree, man.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to move on. Because
I like Shackled City, and a lot of people have told me it's shit. And it's
never read it. Is that the one that takes place in the volcano?
Yeah, it takes place in an inactive volcano where a city's been built. I just like it because I can have the players fight demons while I have metal music in the background.
All right. So, looking through the stream to see if there's any comments.
Why are you sorry, Chris? You had nothing to do with that, man.
Well, I mean, he did outright admit that he put that out there expecting to get your goat. So
put what out there, saying that bad modules can be good, and that had nothing to do with the conversation we were having, though. Yeah, I don't know why. That's the thing. I don't know why he's taking credit for something that really wasn't him. It was me talking about something you had done that I was trying to make a joke about that failed and turned into that. That's all.
Well, to be perfectly fair, sometimes it's hard to tell when you're joking. So
no, not really.
No, not really at all. Like that's the thing. Like it's.
Right.
I don't get why you take me too seriously.
For me, it's difficult.
Okay, that's fair.
So.
No, that's fair.
And I can only speak to my perspective, which is what you were just saying.
See, now I can go fuck you because that's the argument I was making about the module being
bad.
So, go ahead.
That being said, if you changed, I'm just gonna say this one last thing about keeping the Borderlands. If you changed the Caves of Chaos to an abandoned set of mines, and then you had the monsters inside of it actively like warring against one another. And occasionally that conflict would spill out into the town, into the keep itself. That I feel like would be a bit more realistic. That might be more palatable for you, Bear.
Well, again, it's not about realism because we're playing a game where people wiggle their fingers and shoot fireballs out of them. It's just that it completely breaks the suspension of disbelief for me. It just becomes like, what the fuck? You know, it's like so obviously designed to be a game element as opposed. And I get it. Yeah, there was the first introduction module, how to play the game and all that. I'm not arguing that it's bad for that. I'm arguing that it's not one of the 10 greatest modules of all time. You know what I mean? Like there are much better modules for sure.
No, I mean, I would say that any of those lists are questionable anyways, because they're like high school elections. You know, they're mostly about popularity and
or nostalgia.
And nostalgia is there. B2 gets high B2 admittedly and objectively rests firmly on the nostalgia of it. It is a good module, and going back to Cody's remark, or not Cody, but Logan's remark, you can do a lot with it. I feel like one of the things that B2 was written to do is to allow the GM who is learning to insert his own universe into it a little bit, which makes it a poor module in that regard. But so, for example, I've seen people take the Caves of Chaos, and they say that all those monsters are there by tying it into the presence of the evil cult that's in the caves.
Sure.
And that the cult is gathering an army to eventually assault the keep. Yes, Curtis?
I would say being able to link your own stories into a module makes it better, just from a general usability point of view. What I hate about some modules is that they will define exactly what everything can and cannot happen in this module, in this area, like in this section of the world. They will say, you can do this, you can do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. Like, there'll be like this giant paragraph in the introduction saying what can and cannot happen, which is kind of what I think Radiant Citadel did that, where there was like very specific about what can and cannot happen there. And
how do you mean? Like, are you talking about like where they would ban spells, or are you talking about something else?
The banning of some spells, the like how like some characters weren't allowed to do.
There is a module, for example, that says you shouldn't have a cleric with you.
Yeah.
Because John is I can't remember which module it was, but there's a module that states that if you have a cleric of X level or higher in this party, it's basically the module's unplayable. Because if you have a cleric of that level or higher, they have a key spell, talking what Curtis is talking about, that allows them to kind of basically walk through the whole module.
So that's bad game design then at that point in time, right?
Yeah, and there are modules that hinge on restricting the players, and going back to like Tomb of Horrors, the one I hate how modern players look at Tomb of Horrors as if it was ever an adventure that you were supposed to insert into your actual campaign. They talk about how horrible it is and how it's full of gotchas and all of that. Yes, because it is a test. It is the Kobayashi Maru of modules.
Sorry, Keep on the Borderlands?
No. Tomb of Horrors.
Oh, yeah. But Tomb of Horrors, he even admitted he designed that because he was sick of people talking to him at conventions about how great their characters were.
Well, it was also originally written for his expert core of players, who had been through every Gygaxian trope, every little gotcha that his group threw at him. And people plop that down in the middle of their campaign, and it kills their characters. And it's like, this is so stupid. There's no way you can win this. Yes, that's the point. Again, it's the Kobayashi Maru. It's a way to test your adventuring party to see, are you good enough to beat the Tomb of Horrors? The Tomb of Horrors even talks about that at the top of the module. Like, don't play this with your regular characters. Make new ones of such and such level and take them through the dungeon. Yeah.
Yeah, but the pride and arrogance of the players of those days of their 14th level or 20th level characters was huge, man.
Yeah.
Right? This whole idea you could take your character out of the table. I remember encountering that in the 80s. This guy wanting to play with us and bringing his character from his home game, and our DM being like, no, there's no way you have all this stuff. No.
Yeah, that was always a thing. It's like, oh, my other DM gave me this +5 Holy Avenger that flames on command and
has
does double damage versus demons.
And is Vorpal and
it gives me a force field that protects me like plate mail,
and every point of damage I heal, and then if I'm fully healed, it makes
it's vampiric. Yes, it's vampiric.
Yeah,
and there's a permanent remove curse on it. We've all been there.
But that's my problem with a lot of the early D&D stuff, is that it is that level, what we used to call Monty Hall. It was just like shit didn't make sense. Like treasure hoards never made sense. You know what I mean? It was just like, what the fuck? Why do a bunch of goblins have this? You know what I mean? Like, this makes no sense. And so I do like, and that's why I never run prepackaged modules as a general rule, because I would rather do stuff that makes more sense for the setting or for the characters at the time, right? Or take something like, say, Dyson Logos' Goblin Gully, and then flesh it out to another level, so that way it becomes an actual thing that's fun to go through, as opposed to just, let's see how many characters we can kill.
Yeah, they did fix that really quick in the old modules. They really quickly adjusted to making the modules have a little bit more verisimilitude.
It was the UK stuff that did it, I found.
Probably.
Like Crystal Caves and stuff like that. Like, I found that stuff was the stuff where they started to bring in all that stuff. So, I guess I got to give credit to the British for something.
Isle of Dread kind of does that too, but it comes... Yeah, Isle of Dread is a sandbox, but it's a sandbox in which there are key things sprinkled around, and then you can wander and explore the island.
Yeah.
To the point where it gives you a blank map of the island for the players to look at that only shows them what's at the coast.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I'm good with that. And so a lot of people think I hate sandbox. I don't hate sandbox. I just hate the way it's become the buzzword du jour
Oh
now.
yeah,
It's aggravating. It's like, just stop, everybody.
It's a word that deserves the Inigo Montoya comment. You keep using that word, but I'm not sure it means what you think it means.
Yeah, I don't think it means what you think it means.
But
But
so Curtis, you had something you were trying to say real quick.
But sorry, Curtis, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, ye old geek. It's to make sure they struggle to turn Strahd. Just give Strahd turn resistance, or just make it so that he's the first vampire, you can't turn him. Just saying.
Yeah, that's funny. Is the Ravenloft box set that came out later on sort of addressed this by one of the coolest things that they came up with in D&D with that box set is they started giving mummies and vampires age categories like dragons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which makes so much sense, and I think there's a little bit, they were working a little bit of the whole like Anne Rice vampires in there, and because that's when we in the World of Darkness vampires we started seeing. Well, World of Darkness came later, but like even with those Anne Rice books, which were around well before they became popular, we started talking about ancient vampires and vampires who were a little older. And we saw that in some of the horror movies too that were out in the 70s, but it wasn't really a trope like it is nowadays, where you got to kill the ancient vampire to get all the young vampires to die and free the girl. Oh, you killed the vampire that turned her into a vampire, but it doesn't count. You have to find the ancient vampire.
Yeah.
But having them have age categories makes perfect sense, and that's a way to address it. Like you're saying, Curtis, Strahd could be one of these ancient category vampires, and the fact that they gave them to mummies was really cool too.
I will never. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I'll never understand player logic on, I am Strahd, welcome to my castle, turn, and he runs away, oh no, I must flee, we won. Like, how's that satisfying?
As a GM, I would have him flee.
Yeah.
Just so they think that they turned him.
No, I get that. I'm just saying, like,
because he's a vampire. He's supposed to be a cagey fucker, right?
Yeah. But I don't get the player that thinks that's an accomplishment. Like, how's that satisfying to go through all of that shit to just turn him at the end with one roll? That's boring, Where's the epic fight? Where's the victory?
Dude, like, when I I'm sorry. Dude, when I first played through Strahd as a kid, the DM, or my buddy Ethan at the time, he was playing the cleric, and we confronted Strahd for the first time, and he goes, "Turn undead," and Strahd just starts laughing and starts to walk. The look on Ethan's face is like, "Oh my god!" like an actual horror movie.
Yeah, at least vampires were pretty hard to turn in old school. But yeah, I mean, there's it's kind of way off. I said at the top, the topic is not the strongest stream topic. Although I do have to actually be going. I have to be ending it a little bit early. I have an appointment at noon that I have to prep myself for. So seems like a good stopping point. We had some excitement. We had some fireworks. Bear and I going toe to toe.
Yeah, but that's to be expected. It's you and me, man. Like we are diametrically opposed. We are opposite sides of a coin. It's expected, but we can get along and talk.
And I fully admit that I did get a little attacky, and I didn't mean to.
And I got a little defensive, and I didn't mean to. That's why.
Yeah, and you and I are both kind of coming from the same point. I'm sitting there saying you're calling it dumb and stupid. You're not giving me reasons why, but at the same time, I'm all like, it's good. So, and somebody pointed out in the comments, everybody argues their opinion as if it was objective or factual.
Absolutely.
Because that is our, as you pointed out, that is our belief.
And I was the non sequitur, and I didn't have to be.
Yeah. Although, don't blame it on me being lefty.
No, but it was just, at that point, I'm just like, fuck, I'm so tired of that, because I dated a lefty girl who did that. Like,
because I was that guy far before left and right actually made it matter was a thing,
Well, I was dating a girl before it was a thing too, but I just like that Curtis was the guy standing in between us with his hands on both our chests going, guys, come on, you're both pretty.
One last little story comment there. It's like, I remember in '89 when I went to Japan, on a cultural exchange. My best friend went with me also. We ended up in different places in Japan, but we both went there, and we stayed with my aunt, who was a teacher over there. And at the same time, she sat there listening to us talk over dinner one time, and she's like, "You two you both just absolutely have to have the last word, don't you? I'm like, yes. It's like, and that's the thing, it's hard for me to let it go. I don't know if it's just, and I do like an argument. That's a big bad habit of mine. I love a good discussion / argument. I'm easy to bait into them because I like it.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all, man. That's
Yeah.
that's gamers in general, dude. How many comic book
Yeah.
store arguments have you heard in your life? Come on.
Oh, Jesus.
But the thing is you can't argue with someone if you don't give a shit about their opinion. And that's what people always forget, is that when two people can start arguing with each other and have passion in it, it's because they actually either respect the other person's opinion or put weight on the other person's opinion or actually enjoy talking to that other person. People I don't fucking like say something stupid that I disagree with. I go, okay. And I move on with my day.
It's classic. All right, whatever.
Whereas fucking you're wrong is something you'll do with someone you actually feel
whatever floats your boat, right? As my friend used to say, whatever creams your Twinkie.
I don't eat Twinkies. I don't have a boat.
Okay,
that is I got to point out my shortcomings.
That is another phrase that is no longer allowed. Cream your Twinkie. We're not that phrase is now banned. Just saying.
Does it burn your ears, Curtis?
Yes.
How do you feel when I say the word moist?
I don't understand the issue with moist. How else are you supposed to describe a fucking cake? My cake tasted as if it had extra water applied. It's like,
I don't think it's the word moist. It's the way that people go moist. It's that little extra.
Yeah, but I could do that with any word.
Yes.
Taco.
Yeah, but now I just want a taco.
Exactly.
Now my issue comes when people say things like, "Oh, so I power spells using my internal fluids," and it's like
hilarious.
Can we not? Can we not?
My internal fluids. Yeah, the one that used to get me, and then I gotta go, is listening to people who are actual veterans or current serving military saying weaponry.
Oh,
where's that tea come from?
Yeah, that's pretty fucked up.
It's like, pretty sure that's a term you use every day, sir, or did. Used to also get in arguments over the names of clan mechs in BattleTech, the Japanese named ones, and we had this kid who would sit there in a group. I've taken Japanese for blah blah. I'm like, well, then you didn't learn very well because you're pronouncing it wrong. He's like, he used to call the Daishi the Dashai. I'm like, that's not how it's spelled. Not to mention, Daishi means something. It means great death.
Every time someone complains about the Japanese in BattleTech, I just go, okay, it's Kurosawa. It's like Americanized Kurosawa Japanese. It's
also Japanese, like 3,000 years in the future.
Yeah,
the fact that with the Japanese is still even around is a miracle, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Latin in 40K. Nobody cares that it doesn't actually play because it's not. It's High Gothic. It's not Latin.
Everyone acknowledges it's bad. It's bad Latin. Yeah. Everyone does.
Yeah, it's like, for the longest time we had Digitus Imputicus, the impudent finger, the middle finger. But
the fuck.
All right, I do have to go though, folks. See you later. Thanks for coming on.
Take care.
Bye.
If you have comments about video games and how they can be applied to your tabletop gaming, leave them in the comments section of the stream. Usual suspects were here. Bear has a channel. It's a good channel. He does lots of cool streaming. GM Cody, he's been doing great stuff. Mage's Musings. Grumpy Old Slan. Yule Geek. Yep. From the Hilt. Everybody who comes in here has a stream pretty much. You don't have a stream.
Nerd.
I do not.
I didn't see Nerd.
She's right there. She says technically that the mech you're talking about is pronounced dire wolf.
I pronounce it dead wolf.
Well, technically, as far as I'm concerned, the clans are pronounced the sound of crickets because I hate them and they don't exist.
Well, see, we agree on that. See,
I would have much rather seen actual fucking aliens invade the inner sphere than
I agree.
Than eugenics fan fiction, but although it's not the eugenics that bothers me, I just think that they were lazy, and the fact that they co-opted so many of the really cool characters from BattleTech and wrote them in like the Wolf Dragoons were actually clan infiltrators all the time. Oh, that's another stream. I gotta go. Bye. See you later, folks. Nerds Nerd gets the Rants Award, only in second place after Bear.
Hey.
See you later, folks. All right.